Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Percy Dehne. This is your weather for Alaska Weather for June 28th, 2017. Now, starting off, the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit webpage is going to change on Friday, July 14th. So take time to explore new links, maps for PIREPs and tasks and other forecasts before you need them. We're working to improve the site for you, and your emails are appreciated. Now, starting off, we have high to extreme fire weather potential here along just south of the Brooks Range, and high conditions just north of Alaska Range here, and a little swath just east of the Seward Peninsula. And then putting in our satellite in the loop here, we have a low pressure system that's sitting over here just southeast of Kodiak. Nice swath of moisture that's moving up, pretty much covering the whole eastern and northern Gulf. And you're getting a little bit of break in the middle interior. And then over the Bering, you have a low pressure system as well that's turning away, and that's bringing a southerly flow extending up through the northern Bering and as well into the lower Chukchi Sea. So plenty of cloud cover here, and it's bringing some light rain. Otherwise, farther north, you have a weak stationary front extending along the eastern Brooks Range. You're going to have some sunny skies here in the interior and some breaks over the Arctic coastline. And then extending along the western Aleutians, you have a occluded system that's starting to push eastward, and that's bringing a swath of moisture with that, some marine layer stratus. And that'll continue to move eastward, as you can see, in putting this into motion along the chain. And then for southeast, you've got a high pressure system that's sitting just south of Hattaway, and that's bringing some clear skies here and a little bit of high cirrus making into the southern Dixon entrance there. And today's weather, here's that low pressure system I mentioned in the central Bering with the weak trough. The weak trough's spinning around the low pressure system. They'll continue to bring southerly flow with marine layer stratus and light rain and drizzle and fog extending up through the Bering all the way up to the northern Bering as well along the southwest and northwest coastline. And here's these isolated chance for this afternoon and evening for thunderstorms along the Brooks Range. Again, they'll develop with this weak stationary front, improving instability there, and they'll move off the range then in the evening. Otherwise, here's this occluded low pressure system, 1,000 millibars, and the occluded front extending just off east of the Kodiak Island, well, actually over them, extending eastward into the lower southwestern Gulf. Again, light rain moving into that region. Again, the southeast, pretty much high cirrus, southerly flow, onshore flow here, but the main feature is a high pressure ridge extending along the southeast panhandle. So that's helping to keep some of the precipitation out. Then farther north, again, that weak stationary front extending along the Brooks Range, and again, isolated thunderstorms. And then here's that occluded low pressure system that's moving along the central Aleutians. And again, that'll bring some marine layer stratus and light rain and drizzle as that moves eastward. Then for tonight's weather forecast, you're going to have a low pressure system, occluded low pressure system that'll continue to fill and sit there. Again, southeasterly flow that's bringing onshore flow to the northern and southeastern coastal communities, and that'll bring some light rain and fog. Again, along the Alaska Range and northward, you'll have some isolated thunderstorms along the Brooks Range tonight. Otherwise, with this low pressure system sitting over the central Bering, continuous southerly flow, so you're going to have moisture this streaming northward up into the lower Chukchi Sea. So look for some fog and scattered rain showers along the southwest coastline. Otherwise, you have another weak low pressure system that's moving across the Kamchatka Peninsula, and that'll continue to move eastward, and that'll bring in more moisture and precipitation into the Bering. Otherwise, for Thursday's forecast, here's a occluded low pressure system. It'll gradually start falling apart. Again, here's that ridge extending over just south of Hattagwai, extending up the southeast panhandle, just keeping things a little dry there in the Dixon entrance. Otherwise, that southerly push of moisture out ahead of with this occluded system will bring rain and fog to the southeast panhandle, extending to Yakutat as well as to the Anchorage Bowl. The central interior, will have diurnal heating and for Thursday afternoon and evening, so I'll bring some scattered thunderstorms as well. I should say some isolated. Otherwise, this moisture will stream eastward, extending over into the southwest territory, and that'll bring some scattered showers extending all the way up to the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, here's that weak low pressure system that's gradually starting to fill and dissipate, and that weak low pressure system over the Kamchatka Peninsula will continue to move eastward. Then Friday's forecast, that low pressure system will finally enter the western Bering, and that'll bring a southwesterly push with winds and plenty of moisture and precip that will continue to move northward up through the northern Bering, and that'll bring continued more warm air. The weak low pressure system will move inland over just east of Seward Peninsula, and then just south of the Brooks Range. You're going to have scattered thunderstorms for Friday's afternoon and evening hours, and scattered showers up along the northwest coastline. Otherwise, this low pressure system sitting over is moved west with Kodiak. That occluded front is starting to break down. You're going to have scattered showers with that, and predominantly all light onshore flow. The gradient will begin to dissipate. Otherwise, for temperatures today, as of 1 p.m., starting off with the southeast panhandle, pretty much all in the mid-50s to upper 50s. 59 coming at Clowalk, 66 at Stewart, British Columbia, and 58 there at Skagway. And then for the interior, as you go, the warmest temperature, we're in this central interior here. You had 75 at Eagle Airport, 72 at Fort Yukon, and Arctic Village came in at 70. And Port Lake actually warmed up to 70 as well this afternoon at 1 p.m. The high temperature for this afternoon was at Fort Yukon. They got up to 78. And Barrow was at 43. They had the low temperature for today of 35. Otherwise, pretty much all that southerly flow, you're going to have continued warm temperatures as 1 p.m. is showing here, all in the interior in the mid to upper 60s, and then the southwest being modified a little bit more, but in the mid 50s. Then along the chain, you're going to have pretty much all in the 50s, a little cooler as you get far out to Shemya. They're coming at 43. And then in the mid-40s there at St. Paul and St. George. Otherwise, Kodiak would come in at 51, 55 at Palmer. And along the Alaska Peninsula, you had in the mid-50s. Tonight's low temperatures, not surprising, is going to be farther north, again with this high pressure sitting over the Beaufort Sea. So a little cooler easterly winds, so it's down to 40 there at Barrow. And modified some to mid 40s, upper 40s, and then 50s as you get closer to the southeast, south central region. And then in the mid to upper 40s along the chain, it starts tapering down the lower 40s to Shemya. The southeast, they'll have upper 40s to lower 50s, 51 at Sitka, 50 at Clowalk. And then tomorrow's high temperatures, not surprising with that clear pocket up here, clear sunny skies. So the Fort Yukon area will be the high temperatures tomorrow, again in the 80s, and the Eagle Airport as well. Otherwise, Barrow's coming at 55, and then predominantly all in the mid 50s. Throughout the northwest and southwest territory, and then mid 50s to lower 50s along the chain. The southeast, they'll be in the upper 50s to lower 60s, 60 coming in there at Clowalk, 61 at Skagway. Flying weather, you're going to have IFR to marginal VFR, again with this included low system here that's just sitting here and filling. So continued pretty low ceilings there along from Kodiak, extending all the way up to eastern Kenai, just entering the Prince William Sound region. The southeast, you have marginal VFR conditions with marine layer stratus coming in with this onshore push of winds. Otherwise, this low pressure system sitting over the Bering, they'll continue to bring plenty of moisture and low ceilings and stratus and fog through pretty much all the Bering, and as well as along the chain. You have that occluded low system that's moving eastward. That's bringing a swath of lower IFR conditions along the chain and just south of the chain. And then with the easterly flow up here with the high pressure, you're going to have the marine layer stratus here up along the Arctic coastline. And then for the afternoon, look for isolated thunderstorms forming over the Brooks Range. Otherwise, pretty much the same conditions, same areas for IFR and marginal VFR over the Gulf, southwest Gulf portions, the eastern Kenai, over the pretty much all the Bering, except for the western Bering starting to break up a little bit, but otherwise with this weak low pressure system that's continuing to fill and dissipate. And conditions will occur at IFR all the way up to the lower Chattahoochee Sea. The southeast panhandle, continued marginal VFR, a little bit of improvement over the inside waters towards the Dixon entrance. Tomorrow's past conditions, AKwx, you have VFR and isolated thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening. Antietam, VFR and isolated thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening. And then Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR conditions. Rainy, marginal VFR conditions. And then windy VFR conditions. Isabel, VFR conditions. Mataska, VFR conditions. Tanita, VFR conditions. And then Portage, IFR to marginal VFR. Chillicook and White, marginal VFR. And then tomorrow morning's freezing levels. As not surprising, your highest freezing levels are going to be over the Gulf, extending over to the eastern and northern Pacific region with this high pressure system sitting down here. So plenty higher freezing levels with a high pressure dominating and the warmer air being pushed in. And that pretty much 6,000 to 8,000 extends all the way up to the lower Chattahoochee Sea. A little lower in the central Bering with that low pressure sitting there. So you have a little bit cooler air there. So the freezing levels at 4,000. But otherwise it's going to be at 6,000 pretty much along the chain and south of it. For tomorrow's jet stream, you're going to have strong northwesterly push coming through the just west of the Kamchatka Peninsula, and then the subtropical jet could be 110 to 115 knots, and then southwesterly 60 knots going through the southeast panhandle. Otherwise, a southerly jet 55 it increases 80 knots over the Beaufort Sea, and then a weak northwesterly jet, northerly jet over the western Bering at 50 knots. The southeast, you're going to have predominantly high pressure dominating over there, but you'll have a jet farther inland over the lower 48 northwesterly. Tomorrow's 9,000 foot winds. We have pretty much these weak low pressure systems in the Gulf, not the Gulf but the Bering and along the chain, and then the low pressure, the strongest one in the Gulf there sitting near Kodiak. You're going to have out ahead of that strong southerly 20 to 30 knots, and then easterly 25 to 30 going across the Kenai Peninsula, Anchorage Bowl, as well as over into the Aleutian Range and Alaska Range. Farther north, southerly jet, 25 to 15 knot jet, but winds 9,000 feet. 3,000 foot winds. You're going to have, again, these weak low pressure systems, 10 to 15 knots around the majority of these weak low cyclonic flow. The strongest one will be, again, of the vertically stacked low sitting over there just southeast of Kodiak. Again, strong southerly out ahead of it, 20 to 30 knots. And the strongest easterly along the northern coastal areas, extending over the Kenai Peninsula into the Alaska Range. And then all along the northwest and Arctic coastline, you're going to have 20 to 30 knots. It's a little weaker over Dead Horse. You're going to have a continued southerly flow there. Tomorrow's turbulence, you're going to have below 4,000 light to occasional moderate over the Seward Peninsula there. And then you're going to have light to occasional widespread moderate over pretty much over the northern coastal areas, extending over the eastern Kenai, and then a finger of it extending over into Alaska Range near Iliamna, and then light to occasional moderate extending up to the lower Kuskokwim Valley. We'll be back with the Marines after this.
The fire safety goal of landscaping and maintenance is very simple. Reduce the amount of fuel immediately surrounding your home. However, this doesn't mean your landscape has to be barren. Some plants are more fire resistant than others. One of the most important things any wildland homeowner can do is to create a safety zone or fire break around the house using these fire resistant plants.
And there was still some brush that was potentially close enough that could have caused my house to go up if I hadn't taken that out. So it's just keeping that perimeter wide and keeping it free and the cheatgrass down very, very low, I think is what saved my home. It gave the firefighters the perimeter that they needed to get up in here and even do whatever defense they could do to help, you know, any potential engagement with the fire. So at least they had some room to work.
Your safety zone can consist of numerous varieties of plants, including grasses, border plantings, flowers, and vegetables. Check with your local fire officials about the best species for your area. In most areas, a safety zone should be cleared away from your home for a distance of not less than 30 feet. As the slope of the lot increases, additional clearance as far out as 100 feet may be necessary. Clearance also depends on vegetative conditions that provide ladder fuels that enable fire to climb into trees. Trees and shrubs are fine as long as dead or low-hanging branches are removed and the height of ground vegetation is controlled. Be sure to remove all tree limbs around your chimney, as well as any dead branches that may hang over the roof. Accumulated leaves, needles, and other dead vegetation should also be removed. Beyond 100 feet from the house, dead wood and older trees should be removed or thinned. Consult with your local fire officials for specific guidelines appropriate for your location. Keep an eye on any limbs that may come in contact with power lines. If you're not equipped to trim them yourself, call the power company and let them know about the hazard. When it comes to routine maintenance, remember to sweep your gutters, eaves, and roof on a regular basis, especially during the hot, dry weather of the fire season. Tender, dry needles and leaves are a fire waiting to happen. Although it's very convenient to stack firewood under the porch or under the eaves, it's not in your best interest to do so. To say the least, you're inviting trouble. Stack your firewood well away from anything that's combustible, including fences and outbuildings. Outdoor incinerators or burning barrels for household trash are illegal in many areas because they generate wind-blown sparks. If they are allowed, a permit is usually required, so you need to check with your local fire protection agency about laws and ordinances. Your home should have at least 2 ground-level doors as safety exits in case of fire, and each room should have at least 2 means of escape, including a door and a window leading to the outside. This is especially true in bedrooms. Install as many smoke detectors as local regulations require, and ask your fire officials to help you plan and rehearse a home fire escape drill. Regular home fire drills can save your family in an emergency. If you do all these things, especially clearing the safety zone around your house and building a fire-safe roof, you have an excellent chance of protecting your home and family against wildfire. But can these simple precautions really yield such dramatic results? Yes. In fact, the real-life experiences of those who have done these things seem just short of miraculous.
Well, each year I'd taken an axe and cut out the brush and was just cutting that out from around the house in order to make it easy to take the cheatgrass out with a weed eater, a heavy-duty weed eater. And then every year I just kept increasing that distance out from around the house, never knowing how much was going to be enough. You've got to keep that brush clear away from your home so that the fire doesn't have any chance to get up against the side of your house.
The smoke seemed to build up quite a bit, and then I noticed about 10 fire engines coming up the street, and I ran out with the children and said, "What should I do?" And they said, "As quickly as possible, evacuate the house." I looked down at the house, and there were about 200-foot flames almost surrounding the house, and I was sure at that time that the house was gone. A few months before the fire, we heard that you should make sure the sagebrush is cleared away from the house, and he just thought, well, we might start doing that in case there was a fire.
This is beautiful country. It's a privilege and a pleasure to live here. And with that comes a responsibility not only to protect our own property and the safety of our neighbors, but to preserve the resources, the wildlife, and the natural beauty that belong to everyone. Thank you for taking time to watch this program. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call your local fire department, Wildland Fire Agency, or state forester. Your efforts do make a difference.
All right, now starting off with our sea ice analysis. Pretty much you still have a predominantly all sea ice predominantly over the Arctic coastline here. With this easterly flow that's going to be occurring in the next couple days as it picks up, this sea ice is forecast to move west and then move more towards the south of along the northwest coastline, but it'll gradually move farther west predominantly. But as you can see, the sea ice that was in the Seward, Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula regions, those are all have dissipated. So you've got open waters predominantly all over the Chukchi Sea. Okay, Thursday's marine forecast for the southeast. Predominantly inside waters, southerly 10 to 15 knots, 20 you get a little stronger in the Lynn Canal. Otherwise, small crafts on the outside waters, southerly 25 to southeasterly flow there near Yakutat. And your highest wave heights are going to, of course, going to be on the outside waters, 10 to 11 feet. And then for Friday, continuing inside waters, southeasterly to southerly flow, 10 to 15, 20 knots. Then small craft on the outside waters as you head up towards Yakutat, southeasterly flow, and continuing southerly there along coming out of the Dixon entrance. Then for Thursdays for south central, you're going to have predominantly all northeasterly extended down through the Cook Inlet into the Shelikof Strait. And then in the northern Gulf, you're going to have easterly gale force winds. Then they extend all the way down to the Barren Islands, and then less than small craft winds, easterly 20 knots near Kodiak. Then for Friday, continued northeasterly flow extending down through the Cook Inlet in the Shelikof Strait, small craft or just below small craft. And it's going to be variable 10 knots extending down to Kodiak. That'll be the weakest winds, but predominantly all easterly flow on the northern Gulf region, and then northeast extending Prince William Sound. For the Alaska Peninsula for Thursday, you're going to have light and variable 10 knots on both sides, the Bering and the Pacific, and then northerly northeasterly 10 to 15 over the Bristol Bay and then near the Sherikoff Island region. And then Friday, predominantly all westerly to northwest on the Bering side, pretty weak, 10 15 knots, and then 15 to 20 on the Pacific side. And then pretty much along the central Aleutians, extending all the way out to Adak and Atka, you're going to have variable winds 10 knots. That's for Thursday. And then southwesterly push near Shemya. And that'll be with that occluded system that's starting to push in from the west along the chain. And then Friday, as you can see, small craft, southerly, southwesterly 30 knots extending to Adak. And then you're going to have southwest to westerly at 20-25 knots there. But again, your weakest winds are going to be on the Bering side near Dutch, variable winds 10 knots. And then on the Pacific side, just south of Dutch, you're going to have northwest and then westerly 15 knots there near Nikolsky. And then for the west coast for Thursday, forecasts are pretty much all southeasterly, 15 to 20 knots. Northerly coming out of the Bristol Bay region, actually the Kuskokwim Bay region there, excuse me. And then southerly at 15 knots just near St. Paul and St. George. And then for Friday, you're going to have a light and variable southerly going through the northern Bering and then near St. Matthew Island, 20 knots, but otherwise northwesterly coming through the Kuskokwim Delta. Otherwise, for the Arctic coastline for Thursday, here comes that easterly wind I was mentioning, a little bit stronger, and then they go to northeasterly 15 on the northwest coastline. And then coming through the Bering Strait, southerly 15 knots, extending up there towards Point Hope, 15 knots. And then Friday, there'll be pretty much all easterly, small craft winds, and then northwesterly, actually northeasterly, extending over on the northwest coastline. Otherwise, then they switch to northwesterly 10 knots, extending down to Lower Chukchi and the Bering Strait. And then tonight's forecast, again, isolated thunderstorms over the Brooks Range. That'll be for this evening. And then a occluded low pressure system sitting there near just off of Kodiak Island region with the occluded front extending down into the lower Gulf region. Strong southeasterly flow, not too strong, but small craft, some gale force winds are, but otherwise onshore flow, light rain, pretty much for the southeast, extending all the way to the Prince William Sound region. Southern Dixon entrance, you're going to have a high pressure dominating, so you'll have some clearer skies there. Otherwise, the Bering, you'll have that weak low pressure system. So you're going to have scattered showers extending all the way through the Bering, all the way up to the lower Chukchi Sea. Otherwise, for for Thursday, this occluded low system here continues to just sit there and fill, and you'll have continued onshore flow extending through the northern Gulf, coastal communities and the southeast panhandle onshore flow. So light rain and fog there. High pressure is still sitting just south of Hattaway there. Anyway, you'll have also isolated thunderstorms that continue over the Brooks Range with the break in the clouds up there, so diurnal heating there. Otherwise, southerly flow is this weak low pressure system sitting over the Bering and just along the chain will bring scattered rain showers throughout the Bering and the chain. For Friday, scattered thunderstorms along the Brooks Range and the weak occluded front. It will fall apart. Scattered rain showers across the coastal communities. We'll be back tomorrow for your Alaska weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.